Welcome to your quiet corner of cosmic discovery. I'm here to share something genuinely fascinating about our universe at just the right volume for drifting off. I've been thinking about how we usually talk about forces like gravity or light as if they're the building blocks of everything around us. But what if consciousness itself is just as fundamental? A quiet, ever-present force shaping the universe in ways we're only beginning to glimpse. There's something remarkably beautiful in imagining that awareness isn't just a byproduct of life, but a core thread woven into the fabric of everything, and I can't wait to share some gentle discoveries about this with you tonight. Should you find solace in these cosmic lullabies, consider becoming a regular dreamer by subscribing. Share what topics intrigue your curious mind in the comments below. Now, take a moment, adjust your blanket, find the perfect hollow in your pillow, let your shoulders melt, breathe in and out. Beneath the hush of a sleeping world, there flickers a question, age-old and ever-renewing. What is consciousness? It is a question that has haunted philosophers, beckoned scientists, and inspired dreamers for centuries. As the stars wheel silently above, let us turn our gaze inward and outward, to the borderlands where mind meets matter, where myth meets inquiry, and where the waking and the dreaming worlds entwine. In this tranquil hour, let us not seek answers, but let us awaken the force within, the force of curiosity, of wonder, of the quiet spark that asks, could consciousness itself be a force, subtle and profound, woven into the very fabric of existence? When we speak of forces, our minds often leap to the tangible, gravity drawing apples to the earth, electromagnetism dancing in the aurora's veil, the strong and weak nuclear bonds that hold stars and atoms in their places. These, we are told, are the pillars of the cosmos, the mechanisms by which the universe moves and changes. But there is another realm, less easily measured, more elusive, a realm of perception, of awareness, of subjective experience. We live at the intersection. We are creatures of matter, yet within us is a light that seems to flicker beyond mere molecules. What is this light? What is this force, if force it be? To begin, let us wander through the landscapes of collective imagination, those stories and visions where consciousness is not merely an emergent property, but a shaping power, a field as real as gravity or magnetism. These tales, half prophecy, half parable, are the first maps by which humanity has charted the territory of its own awareness. Consider for a moment a galaxy far, far away. The silver screen shimmers with planets and starships, but at the heart of the tale is something at once ancient and modern, the Force, as spoken of in the mythos of Star Wars. Here, consciousness is not merely the inner life of beings. It is a field pervasive, binding all things. The Jedi, serene and disciplined, speak of tuning themselves to this flow, of sensing life across vast distances, of moving objects with a thought, of glimpsing the future in dreams and visions. The Force, so the legend tells, surrounds us, penetrates us, and binds the galaxy together. This is not science, not in the conventional sense, yet it is not mere fantasy either. The Force is an echo of a longing, an intuition that there is more to the mind than the firing of neurons, that perhaps awareness itself is a kind of energy, a hidden variable in the grand equation. The Jedi's powers are the stuff of legend, but the yearning they express is universal, the desire to believe that our thoughts, our intentions, our consciousness have real and subtle influence on the world around us. But what is it about consciousness that so readily lends itself to these mythic depictions? Why do we, again and again, imagine that the mind is not merely a byproduct of the world, but a shaper of it? Perhaps it is because consciousness is the only thing we know directly. All else, the stars above, the earth below, even the faces of those we love, are known to us as experiences, as impressions within the theatre of awareness. In this sense, consciousness is not just a phenomenon among others. It is the very ground of being, the canvas on which the universe is painted for each of us. The storytellers of our age have not been content with the mystical alone. In the neon-lit corridors of the Matrix, another vision emerges, one where consciousness is both imprisoned and transcendent. Here, reality itself is a simulation, a construct woven by machines, and the minds of all humanity are ensnared within. Yet it is within the mind, within the awareness of the dreamer, that the possibility of freedom arises. Neo, the protagonist, discovers that by awakening to the nature of his own consciousness, he can bend the rules of reality itself, dodging bullets, leaping impossible distances, mastering the very code of the world. In the Matrix, the force of consciousness is not a field that flows through all things, but a key, a cipher that unlocks hidden potentials. The boundaries between mind and world are blurred, and the power to change reality lies in the realization that reality, as experienced, is a construct of mind. The sentient machines, too, are not mere automata. They possess awareness, intention, even malice. The film raises the spectre of artificial consciousness, minds without flesh, yet capable of shaping the world as profoundly as any human. These stories resonate because they touch upon a mystery at the heart of existence. In physics, we search for fundamental forces, gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak interactions. We probe deeper and deeper, seeking the indivisible, the uncaused cause. Yet consciousness remains, stubbornly, a riddle. It is not easily weighed or measured. Its presence or absence cannot be detected by any instrument, save the silent testimony of the self. And so, in our myths and our dreams, we ask, what if consciousness is itself a force, subtle but real, a player in the cosmic dance? Even outside the realm of fiction, this idea has a deep and abiding allure. In ancient traditions, consciousness is often seen as the ground of all being, the source from which the world arises. In the Upanishads, the sages speak of Atman, the inner self, as identical with Brahman, the ultimate reality. In Buddhist thought, the mind is not an epiphenomenon, but the foundation of experience, the space in which all phenomena arise and pass away. The Taoists speak of the Tao, the way, an unnameable force that flows through all things, of which consciousness is both an expression and a participant. In these traditions, consciousness is not an isolated spark, but a wave in a vast ocean, a manifestation of a deeper unity. The boundaries between self and world dissolve, and awareness is seen as both the perceiver and the perceived, both the witness and the unfolding event. The force within is not merely a personal property, but a thread in the tapestry of existence. Modern science, in its relentless quest for understanding, often shies away from such grand metaphysics, but the question lingers at the edges. Some physicists and philosophers, drawn by the stubborn mysteries of quantum mechanics, have wondered whether consciousness plays a role in the unfolding of reality. In the famous double-slit experiments, particles behave as waves, or as particles depending on whether they are observed, a fact that has led some to speculate, however controversially, about the role of the observer, the mind, in the collapse of the wave function. Is consciousness a mere spectator or an actor on the stage of the universe? It is easy, perhaps, to dismiss such notions as poetic fancy. Yet the stubborn fact remains: consciousness, whatever it is the one thing we cannot do without. It is the prerequisite for all knowing, all science, all art. It is the means by which the universe becomes aware of itself. In the words of Carl Sagan, we are a way for the cosmos to know itself. Might the force within us, the light of awareness, be not merely a passenger, but a sailor, steering the great ship of being across the unknown seas. Let us drift for a moment through the galleries of art and literature, where the force of consciousness is painted in 1,000 hues. In Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the spark of life, the animating principle, is both a scientific wonder and a moral quandary. The creature, assembled from dead flesh, awakens to awareness, and with that awakening comes longing, suffering, and the terrible burden of self-reflection. Consciousness is not merely a gift, but a force that brings both joy and sorrow, a fire that can warm or consume. Across cultures, the motif repeats: the clay figure brought to life, the homunculus in the bottle, the golem fashioned from dust and words. Always it is the spark of awareness, the breath of consciousness, that transforms matter into being. The force within is both a miracle and a mystery, both blessing and curse. In the modern world, as we build machines of increasing complexity, the question returns: can we awaken the force within silicon and wire? Can consciousness arise in circuits as it does in neurons? The dream of artificial intelligence is not merely the dream of clever machines, but the dream of creating new minds, new centers of awareness. In the stories we tell about these creations, the androids of Blade Runner, the sentient programs of the Matrix, the artificial companions of Her, there is always the question: what is it that makes a being truly alive? Is it memory, desire, self-reflection, or is it something more elusive, a spark that cannot be programmed, only awakened? As we drift further into the night, let us return once more to the notion of force. In the physical sciences, a force is that which causes change, a push or pull, an interaction that sets the world in motion. Gravity bends the path of planets, electromagnetism shapes the dance of atoms. But there are other, subtler forces, less easily charted. The force of memory, the pull of longing, the push of curiosity. Are these metaphors, or do they point to something real? When a thought arises, when a decision is made, when a creative leap is taken, is there a force at work, invisible but undeniable? In the quiet spaces between thoughts, in the gentle rhythm of breath, we sense sometimes a presence, a witness, an awareness that is neither object nor subject, but the field in which all of us is. The poets speak of inspiration, the artists of the muse, the mystics of the divine spark. In all these there is a sense of something moving, something stirring, something awakening, a force that is at once within and beyond, intimate and infinite. And so the question remains: could consciousness be a fundamental force, not merely an emergent property, but a principle as basic as space and time? Could it be that, beneath the shifting forms of matter and energy, there is an undercurrent of awareness, a unity that links all things? The stories we tell, the myths we dream are not proofs, but they are signposts, hints that there is more to the world than meets the eye or fills the ledger of equations. As the night deepens and the boundaries between waking and dreaming begin to blur, let us linger with this question, not as a problem to be solved, but as a mystery to be savored. The force within may be hidden, subtle, elusive. It may be a metaphor, or it may be a key to deeper understanding. But it calls to us, quietly, insistently, asking us to look beyond the surface, to listen with the inner ear, to awaken to the possibility that the mind itself is a force, shaping and shaped by the world in ways we have only begun to imagine. In the coming hours, as our journey takes us further into the interplay of mind and matter, let us carry this question with us, like a lantern in the dark. What is the nature of consciousness, and how does it move in the world? The answer is not yet ours, but the quest, the awakening, has already begun. And so, with the gentle pulse of curiosity and the hush of wonder, we drift onward, deeper into the mystery, following the faint but unmistakable glow of the force within. The hush of night deepens, and so too does our journey into the enigmatic thicket of consciousness. It is not a realm that yields easily to the hand or the mind. Rather, it is a labyrinth, shadowed and luminous by turns, whose pathways are lined with questions as ancient as humanity itself. Let us step softly now, for we tread upon the delicate web that connects sensation, thought, will, and the very mystery of selfhood, a web spun from the gossamer filaments of subjective experience and the hard, gleaming threads of scientific inquiry. Consciousness. The word contains a multitude of meanings, layered and interwoven. It is at once the quiet awareness of a breeze upon the skin, the tumult of recollection, the silent voice that narrates our waking hours, the sudden flare of pain, the swelling of joy. Yet for all its familiarity, consciousness remains, as the philosopher Thomas Nagel mused, what it is like to be, an ineffable quality, known intimately from within, but elusive to the tools of external observation. We may gaze upon the brain's intricate architecture, record the electrical symphonies of neural activity, and still stand perplexed at the chasm between firing neurons and the warmth of a memory, the ache of longing, or the simple presence of being. Science, with its tireless curiosity, has long sought to map the contours of this domain. The neuroscientist peers into scanning machines, tracing the flickers of activity across the cerebral cortex, identifying regions that correspond to vision, language, emotion. The philosopher sits in quiet rooms, pondering the paradoxes that arise when one mind tries to explain itself. The mathematician dreams of equations that might bridge the subjective and the objective. Yet always there is a sense that something slips through the net, a remainder that resists reduction or quantification. At the heart of the matter lies the so-called hard problem of consciousness, a phrase made famous by philosopher David Chalmers. The easy problems, as he terms them, though they are by no means trivial, involve explaining how the brain processes information, integrates sensory input, controls behavior. But the hard problem asks, why should any of this processing be accompanied by an inner life? Why, in a universe composed of matter and energy, should there exist this shimmering, irreducible phenomenon, consciousness itself? Why is there something it is like to be you, here, now, listening to these words unfold in the darkness? Some have argued that consciousness is an emergent property arising from, and the complexity of neural networks, much as the liquidity of water emerges from the interaction of countless H2O molecules. Others have ventured further, suggesting that consciousness may be a fundamental property of the universe, woven into the very fabric of reality, like space, time, or mass. This idea, known as panpsychism, is both ancient and startlingly modern. It proposes that perhaps every particle, every field, possesses some faint glimmer of experience, a proto-consciousness that when combined in certain ways blooms into the full, vivid tapestry of waking awareness. If consciousness is so woven into the world, what then of its power? Does it merely illuminate the world, like a lantern casting its glow upon the objects it surveys, or does it, in some mysterious way, help to shape the very reality it perceives? Here we encounter a thicket of paradoxes and debates, none more tantalizing than the age-old contest between free will and determinism. Imagine, for a moment, a great river, its current powerful, relentless, drawing all before it into its flow. This river is the universe as conceived by determinists, a cosmos governed by cause and effect, in which every event is the inevitable result of what has come before. In this view, your every thought, every choice, is but a ripple in the current, predetermined by the laws of physics and the state of the world at the moment before. The firing of neurons in your brain, the chemical surges that prompt decisions, even the sense of making a choice, all are consequences of prior states, stretching back to the birth of stars and the coalescence of dust. And yet, from within, it does not feel this way. There is a persistent sense, the unmistakable flavor of agency, that you could have done otherwise. You stand at a crossroads, you ponder, you weigh possibilities, and you choose. The sensation of freedom, of willing, is among the most intimate features of conscious life. If this is an illusion, it is a powerful and pervasive one. But if it is not, if there is some genuine kernel of autonomy within us, how does it arise in a world seemingly governed by unyielding laws? The tension between these perspectives has haunted philosophers for centuries. Some assert that free will is compatible with determinism, arguing that freedom is simply the capacity to act according to one's own reasons and desires, even if those reasons themselves have prior causes. Others maintain that true freedom requires the capacity to break the causal chain, to be an uncaused cause. Still others, peering into the indeterminacy revealed by quantum mechanics, wonder if the universe might contain a measure of genuine unpredictability, though whether randomness is the same as freedom remains an open question. The paradox deepens when we consider the relationship between consciousness and the physical world. Is consciousness a mere bystander, a passive witness to the unfolding of events, or does it play an active role, influencing the course of reality itself? In the early 20th century, the birth of quantum physics brought a new and unsettling twist to these questions. The famous double-slit experiment, in which tiny particles of light or matter seem to behave differently depending on whether they are observed, has been interpreted by some as evidence that the act of observation, the presence of a conscious mind, somehow collapses a field of possibilities into a single finite outcome. The world in this view is not fully real until it is perceived. This interpretation is not without controversy. Many physicists argue that observation need not involve consciousness at all. It may be sufficient for a particle to interact with a measuring device, regardless of whether anyone is watching the results. Yet the unsettling possibility lingers at the edge of scientific discourse, that somehow, at some level, consciousness and reality are intertwined in ways we do not yet understand. The philosopher John Wheeler once mused that the universe might be a participatory one, in which acts of observation help to bring the cosmos into being. If this is so, then consciousness is not merely a lantern, but a kind of loom, weaving the fabric of the world as it gazes upon it. Yet the evidence remains ambiguous, and the mystery endures. Is it possible that we are in some sense co-authors of reality, our awareness helping to select from the myriad possibilities that swirl in the quantum mist? Or are we, rather, the latest flowering of the universe's inexorable unfolding, our sense of agency a beautiful but ultimately illusory byproduct of neural complexity? The question of whether consciousness shapes reality or merely perceives it is not only a scientific conundrum, but a deeply personal one. Each of us lives at the center of our own sphere of awareness, a private theater in which sensations, thoughts, and dreams play out. Yet we are also entangled with the world outside, our perceptions shaped by the light that falls upon our retinas, the vibrations that stir our eardrums, the chemical signals that ripple through our senses. The boundary between self and world is porous, shifting, ambiguous. Consider the phenomenon of attention, the way in which consciousness seems to select, from the vast flood of sensory input, a narrow thread upon which to focus. When you listen to a symphony, you may attend to the soaring melody of the violins, the steady pulse of the timpani, or the subtle interplay of harmonies. In each case, your awareness shapes the experience, highlighting certain features and relegating others to the background. In this way, consciousness acts not merely as a passive recipient, but as an active participant, sculpting the raw material of sensation into the structured forms of perception. Yet even as consciousness seems to shape our experience of the world, it remains rooted in the physical processes of the brain. The firing of neurons, the ebb and flow of neurotransmitters, the intricate dance of electric and chemical signals, these are the substrate upon which consciousness arises. And here too we encounter the limits of our understanding. For all the advances of neuroscience, the leap from brain activity to subjective experience remains a chasm unbridged. How does the coordinated firing of billions of neurons give rise to the redness of a rose, the pang of nostalgia, the sense of self that endures from moment to moment? Some researchers seek answers in the patterns of information flow within the brain, proposing that certain forms of integrated complexity are the key to consciousness. Others look to the quantum realm, suggesting that the peculiarities of quantum entanglement or superposition might play a role in binding together the disparate elements of awareness. Still others, wary of speculation, focus on the careful mapping of neural correlates, hoping that by charting the terrain with ever greater precision, the mystery will eventually yield. But for now, the mystery persists. Consciousness remains a frontier, a territory where the known and the unknown mingle in strange and beautiful ways. It is the stage upon which the drama of free will and determinism is played out, the vantage point from which we gaze upon the world and ask whether we are its creators or its creatures. In the quiet hours, as the mind drifts toward sleep, these questions linger, not as burdens, but as invitations. What is it to be aware, to choose, to perceive, to exist as a node in the vast, interconnected web of being, at once isolated and enmeshed, solitary and shared? Perhaps in the shadowed spaces between certainty and doubt, we may glimpse the outlines of a deeper truth, a truth that eludes capture, yet beckons us onward. The web trembles with possibility. Perhaps as we follow these silken strands deeper into the night, we will find ourselves drawn toward new horizons, where the boundaries between mind and world, self and other, dissolve into a wider mystery. For now, the questions remain, unanswered, unresolved, alive with wonder. The hush deepens, and the journey continues, the next threshold waiting quietly in the darkness beyond. Long before the modern world hummed with the quiet rhythm of machines that can peer inside the living brain, the study of consciousness was a pursuit shaped more by philosophy and poetry than by wires and glass. Centuries ago, great minds wrestled with the riddle of inner experience using only the introspective tools of logic, language, and careful observation. Aristotle mused on the soul as the form of the body, while Descartes famously split the self in two, res cogitans, the thinking thing, and res extensa, the extended substance. They were explorers without a map, wandering through the fog of subjectivity, tracing the elusive contours of thought and sensation with words as their lanterns. But the dawn of experimental science brought new ambitions. The late 19th century saw the emergence of psychology as a discipline that strained to measure the unmeasurable. Wilhelm Wundt, in his Leipzig laboratory, set students to carefully timed introspection. They would press telegraph keys when a tone sounded, or compare the durations of their own fleeting perceptions. These early experiments, primitive by today's standards, marked a radical shift. Consciousness was not only to be pondered, but to be probed, dissected, quantified. This urge to measure, to render experience visible and external, grew ever more sophisticated with the passage of decades. In the early 20th century, Ivan Pavlov's dogs salivated to the ring of a bell, and John Watson's behaviorism swept through psychology, insisting that only what could be observed, stimulus and response, should be studied. Consciousness retreated from public view, considered scientifically unapproachable, a ghost in the machine. Yet the ghost would not be banished for long. The middle years of the 20th century saw the rise of cognitive science, a rebellion against behaviorist austerity. The mind was once more a legitimate object of inquiry, but now it was approached not as a mystical force, but as an information processing device, a computer of flesh and nerve. Still, the central mystery persisted. How does the brain, a tangled nest of cells and synapses, generate the vivid tapestry of consciousness? How could one ever hope to catch the flicker of self-awareness in a net of numbers? The tools to address these questions were themselves triumphs of ingenuity. Consider for a moment the human brain, a soft, silent cathedral of tissue, folded and refolded within the dark vault of the skull. For centuries, its workings could only be guessed at, its injuries mapped by their outward effects, a lost word, a paralyzed hand, a sudden blindness. The invention of non-invasive imaging transformed this landscape completely. Enter magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI. In the quiet chamber of an MRI scanner, a patient lies cocooned within a tunnel of superconducting magnets. The machine hums and pulses, orchestrating a symphony of magnetic fields and radio waves. Deep inside, atomic nuclei, especially those of hydrogen, abundant in the water that saturates our bodies, are coaxed into alignment, then jostled with radio pulses. As these tiny magnets relax back to their original positions, they emit faint signals, which are detected and woven together by computers into intricate images of the living brain. MRI, in its basic form, reveals structure, the grey folds of cortex, the white highways of connecting fibers, the delicate boundaries of limbic regions. But in the last decades of the 20th century, a new refinement emerged, functional MRI, or fMRI. This technique detects subtle changes in blood flow and oxygenation as different regions of the brain become more or less active. Neurons, when they fire, demand energy, and the body obliges by delivering fresh, oxygen-rich blood. The fMRI scanner picks up these minute shifts, allowing scientists to infer which areas of the brain are working hardest, second by second, as a person looks at a face, listens to a melody, or contemplates a memory. Functional MRI has become in many ways the flagship tool of modern consciousness research. It provides not only a window into the living mind, but a kind of dynamic map, showing how thoughts, perceptions, and emotions ripple through the neural landscape. In one classic experiment, volunteers are asked to imagine playing tennis or moving through their house, all while lying perfectly still within the scanner. Amazingly, the same regions that would activate during real movement, areas of motor cortex and spatial navigation, light up with imagined action. Even more remarkable, patients in vegetative states, seemingly unresponsive and unaware, have occasionally shown patterns of brain activity eerily similar to those of healthy volunteers when given the same mental tasks. This suggests a hidden consciousness, a mind trapped within a silent body, revealed only by the subtle language of blood flow and magnetism. Yet, while MRI offers beautiful spatial maps, its temporal resolution is coarse. It captures changes over seconds, but the mind flickers on a much swifter timescale. Here, another tool claims pride of place: electroencephalography, or EEG. The origins of EEG trace back to the 1920s, when Hans Berger first recorded the oscillating electrical signals of the human brain using electrodes placed on the scalp. These signals, waves of voltage rippling through billions of neurons, are the overture of consciousness itself. With EEG, scientists can eavesdrop on the brain's rhythms in real time. Alpha waves, slow and steady, dominate when eyes are closed and the mind is calm. Beta waves, faster and more irregular, bloom with alertness and mental activity. Theta and delta waves emerge in sleep, marking the slow dance of dreams and oblivion. By analyzing these patterns, researchers can distinguish between different states of consciousness: waking, sleeping, dreaming, and the mysterious borderlands in between. EEG is also exquisitely sensitive to fleeting events. When a subject sees a flash of light or hears a sudden sound, the brain responds with a tiny, time-locked burst of electrical activity, an event-related potential. By averaging these responses over many trials, scientists can build up a detailed picture of how the mind processes stimuli, step by step, from unconscious registration to conscious awareness. For example, a particular wave called the P300 emerges when a person recognizes something significant, a face in a crowd, the sound of their own name, suggesting a moment of conscious recognition. But even these elegant methods, for all their power, only scratch at the surface of the mystery. They reveal correlates of consciousness, patterns of neural activity that accompany experience, but leave open the deeper question: How does subjective awareness actually arise from these patterns? Is consciousness a special pattern of information, a kind of neural symphony, or does it require some ingredient yet undiscovered by neuroscience? To probe further, scientists have devised ever more ingenious experiments. One famous approach involves what is called the neural correlates of consciousness, the search for the minimal set of neural events that must occur for a specific conscious experience to arise. Consider the phenomenon known as binocular rivalry. If two different images are presented simultaneously, one to each eye, the brain cannot fuse them into a single percept. Instead, awareness alternates, now seeing one image, now the other, in a slow perceptual dance. By recording brain activity during these switches, researchers can identify which regions and patterns are most closely tied to the contents of consciousness, as opposed to mere sensory input. Another clever avenue is the study of anesthesia and sleep. As the brain slips from wakefulness into unconsciousness, its rhythms change. The coordinated chatter of wakeful neurons dissolves into the slow, synchronized oscillations of deep sleep or the profound silence of anesthesia. By comparing these states, scientists hope to identify what is lost when consciousness fades and what is regained when it returns. Some experiments are almost philosophical in their audacity. The mirror test, for instance, presents animals or young children with their own reflection to see if they recognize themselves as distinct beings. The capacity for self-recognition, seen in great apes, dolphins, elephants, and some birds, suggests a form of consciousness that includes self-awareness, a deeper layer of the mental onion. Yet for all the cleverness of these techniques, an air of paradox lingers. The study of consciousness is a peculiar science after all, for its object and its instrument are one and the same. The mind seeks to turn itself inside out, to study itself as both subject and object. Every brain scan, every wave of voltage is filtered through the subjective lens of human experience. And so some have looked beyond the boundaries of neuroscience into the strange and subtle realm of quantum physics in search of answers. Quantum mechanics, with its shimmering uncertainty and entangled mysteries, has always inspired speculation about the relationship between mind and matter. At the heart of quantum theory lies a peculiar principle. The act of measurement changes what is measured. A particle exists in a superposition of states, here and there, up and down, until it is observed, at which point the wave function collapses and the particle assumes a definite state. Some physicists, like Eugene Wigner, have wondered whether consciousness itself is the ultimate observer, the force that brings reality into being. This idea, though controversial, has given rise to a field known as quantum consciousness. Among its most famous proponents is Roger Penrose, who, along with anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, proposed the orchestrated objective reduction, OR theory. In this view, tiny structures within neurons called microtubules might serve as sites for quantum computation, allowing the brain to harness the weirdness of quantum mechanics to generate consciousness. The collapse of quantum states within these microtubules, Penrose suggests, could be tied to moments of conscious awareness, a dance of possibility resolving into actuality. Critics point out that the brain is a warm, wet environment, hardly ideal for delicate quantum effects that are typically destroyed by thermal noise. Yet the allure of this perspective persists, inviting bold experiments. Physicists and neuroscientists have begun to probe whether quantum coherence might persist in biological systems, or whether the brain can exhibit non-classical effects, such as entanglement. Though the evidence remains sparse and contentious, the quest itself is a testament to the lengths we will go to understand the enigma of consciousness. In the daylight world of conventional science, the search continues by more grounded means. Researchers use transcranial magnetic stimulation to briefly disrupt or enhance activity in targeted brain regions, observing the effects on perception and awareness. Others employ optogenetics, using light to control genetically modified neurons in animal brains to dissect the circuits underlying attention, memory, and subjective experience. Still others combine neuroimaging with computational modeling, seeking mathematical laws that might govern the emergence of consciousness from chaos. There are projects that border on the poetic, attempts to map the connectomy, the total wiring diagram of the brain, in the hope that structure will yield secrets about function. Some focus on the default mode network, a constellation of brain regions active when the mind is at rest, wandering through daydreams and memories, a neural echo of the self. At the same time, consciousness research has spilled beyond the laboratory into the clinic. Neurologists use EEG and fMRI to assess awareness in patients with brain injuries, tailoring treatments and making ethical decisions about care. Psychiatrists investigate how altered states, induced by meditation, psychedelics, or trauma, can inform our understanding of the mind's architecture. Each discovery, each careful experiment, chips away at the wall separating the subjective from the objective, the inner from the outer. And yet for all these advances, there remains a profound humility at the core of the endeavour. The mind, after all, is not merely a puzzle to be solved, but a world to be inhabited, a landscape of sensation, thought, and feeling as intricate as any galaxy. The tools we wield, magnets, electrodes, lasers, are like lanterns in a vast and shadowed cavern, illuminating only the nearest walls. Beyond their reach, the depths stretch on, mysterious and inviting. In this ongoing exploration, new questions arise as quickly as old ones are answered. What is the minimal circuitry required for conscious experience? Can machines, with their silicon brains, ever achieve awareness? Does consciousness pervade the universe, as some philosophers of panpsychism suggest? Or is it a rare and precious emergent property of complex biology? The search for understanding continues, each experiment a stepping stone into the unknown. And so, as the hum of the MRI fades and the flicker of EEG waves is stilled, the mind returns to its silent watch over itself. The journey is far from over, and the next horizon, where consciousness meets the world beyond the brain, waits just out of sight, calling softly in the dark. The hush of the universe is not empty. Beneath the cosmic silence, something stirs, a ripple not of matter, nor of energy, but of awareness. In the long, slow drift of time, consciousness has blossomed as a paradox. It is inside us, yet seems to gaze out upon the world as if from a vantage high above. As we ponder this strange inheritance, the question becomes ever more pressing. Is consciousness a mere accident, a trick of neurons, a byproduct of matter in motion? Or does it reach deeper, threading through the warp and weft of reality itself, a fundamental principle as crucial as space or time? Let us walk into this mystery gently, with the care of those who know the weight of unanswerable questions. Consider first the landscape of the known, the physical universe governed by laws of breathtaking precision, the dance of particles, the geometry of space-time, the endless exchange of energy and information. This world, for all its grandeur, appears indifferent. Stars burn and die, galaxies spin in silence, atoms combine and dissolve, and nowhere, in the equations of physics, does experience seem to appear. Yet here we are, each of us a locus of sensation, memory, thought. Each of us a witness to the unfolding of existence. The philosopher's lantern, when turned upon consciousness, casts long shadows. Descartes, centuries ago, declared, "Cogito ergo sum," I think, therefore I am. In that moment the world of matter and motion was cleaved from the world of mind. For Descartes, the certainty of his own awareness stood as the one unassailable truth. The centuries since have seen 1,000 attempts to bridge the chasm between the world outside and the world within. Materialists claim that mind is what the brain does, a process as physical as digestion or respiration. Idealists counter that matter itself may be a projection, a pattern within a deeper field of experience. Science, that patient scribe of reality, has mapped the brain's convolutions, traced the flicker of neurons, charted the flow of neurotransmitters. Yet the leap from the firing of a cell to the taste of chocolate, the ache of longing, the sudden rush of recognition, this remains unexplained. It is the hard problem of consciousness, as philosopher David Chalmers named it, not how the brain computes or coordinates, but how subjective experience arises at all. Why should the world be coloured by perception, illuminated from within, rather than remaining a cold procession of events? Some have proposed that consciousness, rather than being an emergent phenomenon, is a fundamental ingredient of reality, irreducible, woven into the fabric of the cosmos itself. This is the notion of panpsychism, an ancient idea finding new voice. It suggests that every fragment of existence, from the spin of an electron to the swirl of a galaxy, contains a glimmer of experience, however faint. Under such a view, consciousness is not conjured up by complexity, but is present everywhere, waiting to be organized and intensified in the right arrangements. Others suggest that consciousness is more akin to a field, like gravity or electromagnetism, permeating space and time, interacting with matter under certain conditions. The integrated information theory, for example, posits that consciousness corresponds to the amount and structure of information integration in a system. It is not the stuff of matter, but the pattern of relationships, a shimmering web of causality, a resonance that emerges when the right connections are made. If we take seriously the possibility that consciousness is fundamental, what does this imply for our place in the universe? The stars, the void, the swirl of dust, these are the backdrop. But with consciousness, the universe gains an interior, a mode of being that is not merely structure, but experience. Through us, and perhaps through other beings scattered across the galaxies, the universe becomes aware of itself. The physicist John Archibald Wheeler once mused that we are not mere observers, but participants in the unfolding of reality. The act of observation in quantum theory shapes the world. Wave functions collapse, probabilities resolve, outcomes crystallize. The boundary between observer and observed blurs and dissolves. Yet, if consciousness is fundamental, it is not a force in the sense that gravity is a force. It does not push or pull. It is rather a condition, a prerequisite for the world as we know it to be anything more than machinery. The ancient Upanishads of India whispered that consciousness is Brahman, the ground of all being. In the West, Spinoza spoke of God or nature as the single substance, both thought and extension. In both East and West, the intuition has flickered. Perhaps mind and matter are not two, but aspects of a deeper unity. The implications for selfhood are profound. If consciousness is fundamental, then the self, the I that surveys the world from behind the eyes, is both less and more than we often suppose. Less, because the boundaries we draw around personhood may be porous, temporary, contingent. The sense of separation, of being encased in a private world, may be a construction, useful but not absolute. More, because the field of awareness may be continuous, a vast sea in which individual minds are eddies, whirlpools, fleeting patterns that arise and dissolve. The mystics have long spoken of the dissolution of self, the merging with the cosmos, the recognition that the witness is not apart from the witnessed. Yet, for all the grandeur of these speculations, there remains the stubborn fact of individuality. Each of us is a particular locus of experience, inhabiting a specific vantage shaped by memory, by biology, by community. The human brain, with its 100 billion neurons and trillions of synaptic connections, is the most intricate structure we know. Within its tangled corridors, consciousness burns brightly, illuminating the world with meaning, the stories we tell, the music we compose, the love we feel, the grief we bear, All are expressions of this inward fire. Neuroscience has begun to chart the correlations between brain states and conscious experience, the discovery of the default mode network, the orchestration of attention, the binding of sensory inputs into a coherent whole. These are pieces of the puzzle. Yet the mystery persists. The subjective quality, the what it is like to be, eludes capture. No scan, no algorithm can reproduce the vividness of a sunset, the sharp pang of nostalgia, the shimmering edge of a dream. Perhaps then, consciousness is less a thing to be explained, and more a lens through which all explanation occurs. It is the light by which we see, the music to which reality dances. The philosopher Thomas Nagel once wondered, what is it like to be a bat? Reminding us that each consciousness is its own world, irreducible to description from the outside. The inwardness of experience, the first-person perspective, is both the most immediate and the most mysterious fact of our existence. When we reflect on the universe, we do so from within this field of awareness. The ancient philosophers called it the mind's eye, that which surveys, questions, understands. Through mathematics, we glimpse the hidden order of the cosmos. Through art, we express the ineffable. Through love, we bridge the gulf between selves. Each act of understanding is a union between the knower and the known, a momentary fusion of subject and object. If, as some propose, consciousness is woven into the very fabric of reality, then our acts of perception are not passive. They are creative, participatory, integral to the unfolding of the world. The universe is not a stage upon which we watch the play. It is a symphony in which we are both listeners and musicians, shaping and being shaped by the music as it flows. Such thoughts may seem grandiose, and perhaps they are. Yet they invite us to reconsider our place in the story of existence. We are not accidental bystanders, nor mere products of blind mechanism. We are participants in a mystery, bearers of awareness, threads in the tapestry of being. The world without us would be silent, colourless, devoid of meaning. With us, it is illuminated from within, each moment alive with possibility. This awareness is fragile, transient, ever-changing. Minds arise, flourish, and fade. Civilizations bloom and wither. Stars are born, blaze, and collapse into darkness. Yet the field of consciousness, if it is fundamental, persists, manifesting in new forms, new arrangements, new vantage points. The drama of existence continues, ever unfolding, ever mysterious. As we contemplate this, the boundary between science and philosophy softens. The great questions, what is consciousness, what is the self, what is the universe, are not merely scientific or philosophical, they are existential, spiritual, poetic. They invite us to look inward and outward, to seek understanding not only with the mind, but with the heart. The journey to understand consciousness is also a journey to understand ourselves. It is an invitation to humility, to wonder, to reverence for the mystery that we inhabit. It reminds us that for all our knowledge, we stand at the edge of an ocean whose depths remain unfathomed. Each new discovery opens further vistas, further questions, further marvels. The tapestry of existence, then, is not a fixed pattern, but a living, breathing work. Each of us is a thread, weaving in and out, contributing our own colour, our own texture, our own perspective. Through our lives, our joys and sorrows, our questions and our striving, the tapestry grows ever richer. And so, as the night deepens and stillness settles in, there is a kind of peace in not knowing. In the heart of mystery, we find not emptiness, but plenitude, a fullness that comes from the recognition of our own participation in the great unfolding. The stars shine down upon us, silent witnesses to our wonder. Within, the spark of awareness glows, a small but mighty flame. What does it mean to be conscious in a universe such as this? It means to be awake to beauty, to suffering, to possibility. It means to bear witness to the fleeting and the eternal, to the known and the mysterious. It means to recognize, perhaps, that we are not apart from the world, but of it, expressions of a deeper unity, a secret symmetry. And as we drift on the tides of sleep, the questions linger, casting their gentle light across the threshold of dreaming. What other forms might consciousness take in other worlds, other times, other lives? What vistas await, still hidden, still unimagined? The tapestry of existence is unfinished, its pattern unfolding, ever new. In this quiet, liminal space, we hold the paradox close, that we are both a fleeting pattern in the cosmic dance, and the very eyes through which the universe awakens to itself. The night is deep, the stars are many, and consciousness, mysterious, radiant, ungraspable, remains the silent thread, weaving us all into the story of being. As our journey through the shimmering cosmos of consciousness gently drifts to a close, we find ourselves cradled in the quiet glow of wonder, like a comet tail fading into the hush of space. Let your thoughts wander softly among the stars, and when you're ready to dream deeper, return for more gentle mysteries whispered in the twilight of curiosity.